Andrew had always been the life of every party. Wherever there was fun, he was there. He never missed a club night, a party, or any event that promised a good time with hot girls and guys. Even when choosing a job, he picked something exciting, becoming a tattoo artist. When it came to relationships, Andrew only went for casual flings and one-night stands. Commitment was never his thing, but his carefree life came to a sudden stop one morning when he came home from the club and found a crying baby at his doorstep. At first, he thought he was still drunk and seeing things. He rubbed his eyes several times, but the baby was still there, wailing. Confused, he wondered whose child it was. Not wanting to be accused of kidnapping, he quickly called the police. When the officers arrived, Andrew asked them to take the baby away immediately. But then they found a letter tucked inside the basket. The letter was addressed to Andrew. When they asked if he was Andrew, he said yes, and they read the letter aloud. It was from a woman named Barbara, saying she had gotten pregnant after their one-night stand and had the baby. She wrote that she wasn't ready to raise a child and was leaving the baby in his care. Andrew was stunned. He'd had so many one-night stands that he couldn't even remember a Barbara. Besides, he always used protection. There was no way the baby was his. He told the officers this, but they reminded him that condoms aren't 100% reliable and told him to man up and take care of his baby. Then they handed the baby to him. Andrew was still in disbelief. The officers even joked that he didn't need a DNA test because the baby looked exactly like him. And it was true. The baby did. Still, Andrew refused to believe it and agreed to get a test done. At the hospital, he prayed desperately that the baby wasn't his. But when the results came back, it confirmed the baby was indeed his. Refusing to accept it, he asked for another test. The results were the same. Andrew felt like the ground had fallen from under him. He had avoided relationships to stay free of commitment, and now he had to raise a whole human being on his own. From the hospital, he went straight to his parents' house, hoping they'd take the baby in. He figured they'd be thrilled, since they always nagged him about settling down and giving them grandchildren. But things didn't go as planned. His parents refused, saying they were done raising kids. They told Andrew he could visit with the baby sometimes, since they already adored their grandchild, but the responsibility was his. They hoped it would finally teach him about commitment and put an end to his reckless lifestyle. Andrew was now stuck with a baby and had no idea what to do. It was his first time ever holding one. Even though his parents refused to take the baby in, they still gave him some guidance on what to do since he was completely clueless, but the rest was up to him. The only thing his parents were happy to do was give the baby a name. Andrew hadn't thought of any since he'd never planned on having kids. They named him Elian, and Andrew thought it sounded nice. He didn't really have any other option anyway. His life changed completely, from living freely and recklessly to staying home, changing diapers, and feeding a little human. Though he could stay up all night dancing and drinking without a problem, he struggled to stay awake all night soothing a crying baby. He had to make a lot of changes for Elian. He even traded his beloved motorbike for a car since he couldn't carry a baby around on a bike. Most of his money now went to formula, diapers, and baby supplies. Plus countless hospital trips whenever he worried something was wrong, only to find out Elian was just gassy or teething. There wasn't enough left to hire a nanny, so Andrew moved his tattoo work home to earn money while taking care of Elian. At first, he hated staying home while his friends went out to have fun. He'd watch their posts and wish he could just nap for a few minutes between Elian's cries. But over time, that feeling faded. He stopped caring about parties and just wanted to be with his son. He started cherishing little moments like Elian's first steps or first words, and when Elian's first word turned out to be Dada, Andrew couldn't stop the tears. He recorded every milestone, wanting to remember it all. He still had a lot to learn, but he had become a great father. Elian wasn't just his son anymore. He was his best friend. Andrew would give the world for him and was ready to protect him from anything. Time flew by, and soon Elian was old enough to start school. Andrew cried at the thought of being apart from his son, even though it was just for a few hours. He had spent every moment of the past few years with Elian, so the idea of being separated, even briefly, felt unbearable. He also worried about school bullies, knowing how cruel some kids could be. To prepare Elian, Andrew had already taught him a few self-defense moves, just in case. Luckily, Elian never needed to use them. There weren't any bullies at school, and he enjoyed going every day. Andrew often received calls from the teachers praising how bright and well-behaved Elian was, and it filled him with pride. Everything was going well until a rich, spoiled boy named Thomas transferred into Alion's class. Thomas quickly formed his own clique and began picking on anyone who refused to follow him. Alion sometimes mentioned him at home, and Andrew didn't hesitate to remind him he could use the self-defense moves he'd taught him. But Alion always said fighting was wrong, and that he would report Thomas to the teachers instead. That frustrated Andrew, especially since the teachers only gave Thomas short lectures without taking real action. Every time Andrew went to pick up Alion from school and saw that brat, he had to stop himself from marching over to give the kid and his mom a piece of his mind. One day, Andrew got a message from an old friend inviting him to a housewarming party. He was surprised, as his friends had long stopped inviting him out, after finding out he had a son, knowing he always turned them down. Realizing how long it had been since he last went to a party, he figured it wouldn't hurt to go and catch up. Since the party was on a weekend, he decided to leave Alion with his parents for the night and finally take a little break. Knowing his friends, Andrew was sure the party would last all night and be filled with drinks, music, and plenty of women. He had already made up his mind not to talk to, or even look at any of them. The last thing he wanted was another baby showing up at his doorstep. Not that he would mind now, but raising a child took money, and he barely had enough for one. He even decided to avoid drinking so he wouldn't make any mistakes under the influence. At the party, Andrew thought he'd feel as energetic as before, but the excitement never came. He just sat there, bored and distracted, wishing he could go back home to Alion. Even though he hadn't had sex in a long time and felt tempted by a few people, he reminded himself of the consequences that could come from giving in, and that was enough to stop him. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore and decided to leave. Just as he stood up, he accidentally bumped into someone, spilling their drink all over them. Andrew quickly apologized, trying to help wipe the stain from the man's shirt. The guy Seth grabbed Andrew's hand and said, "It's fine," finally getting a good look at him. Recognition flickered in his eyes. He knew Andrew. Seth used to chat with him on a dating site a while back. They'd even planned to meet in person before Andrew suddenly ghosted him, probably after Seth admitted he'd started developing feelings, even though Andrew had made it clear he wasn't looking for anything serious. Though they had only video called once, Seth recognized him right away. He stared at Andrew, waiting to see if he'd remember him too, but Andrew's expression stayed blank. He clearly had no idea who Seth was, and probably hadn't cared enough to remember. Meanwhile, Andrew's hand was still resting on Seth's chest, where Seth had grabbed it. He could have pulled away, but for some reason, he didn't. Seth's chest felt firm under his palm, and Andrew couldn't help but wonder what the rest of him felt like. Realizing his thoughts, he sighed inwardly. He must really be touch-starved. And then another thought hit him. If it was with a guy, he wouldn't have to worry about any babies. The idea was tempting. It wasn't hard to find someone up for a one-night stand at his friends' parties. All he had to do was ask. Seth noticed the way Andrew was looking at him and guessed what he wanted. To be sure, he decided to test his hunch. Placing his hand over Andrew's, still resting on his chest, he leaned in closer until their faces were just inches apart. "With the way you're staring," Seth teased, "I might think you want to eat me up." Andrew smirked slightly. "What if I do? Are you open-minded?" Seth gave a short, quiet chuckle and stepped back, his suspicion confirmed. He began unbuttoning his shirt slowly. "The shirt feels sticky," he said casually. "Do you know any room I can change in?" That was all the signal Andrew needed. He gave a small smirk. "I think I might know a room. Lead the way," Seth replied. Andrew had spent most of his boring time earlier wandering around the house, so he knew exactly where to go. By the time they reached the room, Seth's shirt was already fully unbuttoned. Seth approached Andrew, expecting him to make a move the moment the door closed. But Andrew just stood there, unmoving. Seth stepped closer, cupping Andrew's face gently. "What's wrong?" he whispered. "Not so hungry anymore?" Andrew suddenly grabbed him by the neck and pulled him in for a kiss. Seth felt a warm, fluttering rush the moment their lips met. He had thought he was completely over Andrew, but it seemed some feelings still lingered. He kissed back, firm yet gentle, and the two stumbled onto the bed. Seth melted into the kiss, but Andrew didn't feel the same. He had kissed plenty of people before without emotion, but this time, the emptiness felt different. He couldn't enjoy it. He broke the kiss, making Seth move to his neck instead, hoping it would feel better once things went further. Maybe it was just because it had been a while, he thought. Seth noticed the change in Andrew's expression. He didn't look into it at all. Thinking he wasn't satisfying him, Seth grew more intense, kissing down Andrew's neck and chest while unbuttoning his shirt. Andrew wanted to feel something, but the guilt wouldn't leave. Before he realized it, he stopped Seth and got off the bed. Seth sat up, confused and disappointed. What's wrong? Am I not satisfying you? Andrew shook his head immediately. No, it's not that. You didn't do anything wrong. I don't think I can do this tonight. I'm sorry. Before Seth could respond, Andrew quickly left the room. Seth just sat there, stunned. He remembered Andrew saying he only did casuals and one-night stands. So why hadn't Andrew wanted him? Even for a one-night thing, Andrew had turned him down. As Andrew left the party, he wondered what was wrong with him. Had he lost his superpower to kiss and hook up with strangers? Would he have to become a monk because he wasn't ready for love or forever? Andrew shrugged it off, took a long cold shower, and went to bed. The next day, Andrew picked up Elian since he had school on Monday, and he'd missed his son and wanted to spend time with him. On Monday, later in the day, after dropping Elian off, Andrew was at home with a tattoo appointment when his phone rang. He assumed it was another call praising how brilliant his son was, but this time it wasn't. Elian had punched Thomas and broken his nose. Andrew was surprised, but not panicked. Honestly, he'd been wanting Elian to do that for the longest time. He rescheduled his appointment and went straight to the school, heading for the principal's office where Elian was being held. He expected to see the same principal who always favored rich kids and ignored others, ready to give her a piece of his mind. Instead, he saw a very familiar face in the principal's chair, the man from the party. Seth almost shot up when he saw Andrew enter. Are you Elian's father? Seth asked. I am, Andrew replied. Before he could react, Thomas's mother started shouting, blaming Elian's behavior on being raised without a mother, asking him to look at the damage his son caused hers, and how was going to compensate for it. Andrew looked from Thomas's bloody nose to Elian. Did you do that? He asked. Elian hung his head and nodded. I'm sorry. Instead of scolding, Andrew beamed with pride. What are you apologizing for? You did good. He high-fived Elian. The room went silent. Everyone was shocked. Seth stepped in calmly, reminding Andrew that violence was against school rules. Andrew fired back that bullying apparently wasn't, since no one had ever punished Thomas before. Seth expressed, even so, encouraging violence isn't the solution. It can have long-term consequences for Elian and those around him. Andrew retorted, I don't need lectures on parenting. If the school isn't going to address the bullying, I'll teach my son to stand up for himself. Seth listened, then said he understood there may have been bias under the previous principal, but she's been fired. He was in charge now, and won't let bullies or offenders go unpunished. Andrew asked, so what? You're going to start by punishing my son? He demanded that if Elian was going to face consequences, Thomas should too. To his surprise, Seth agreed that Thomas would also be punished. Thomas's mother threatened to withdraw their donations from the school, citing their status as the biggest donors. She demanded that Elian be expelled. Seth just sighed, sinking back into his chair. Andrew thought he was going to give in to her, already rolling his eyes. It's good I didn't sleep with him, he thought bitterly. Such a jerk. But to his surprise, Seth said firmly, he can't excuse Thomas just because of her donations. Both boys will receive after-school detention to reflect on their actions and write an essay on why following school rules is important. Andrew groaned. After-school detention? Is this punishment for the kids or the parents? I'll have to wait around to pick him up since obviously, he can't get home alone. Seth replied dryly, would you prefer I suspend him instead? Andrew immediately said, no. Seth continued, Elian's a good kid with an excellent record. That's the only reason he was being lenient. But if there's a next time, it'll be different. Andrew had no choice but to accept, feeling a mix of emotions for Elian, who was going to go through punishment for the first time in his life. He left after encouraging him and telling him he'd be back to pick him up after school, leaving Thomas's mom still yelling about not accepting the punishment for her son. After everyone had been dismissed, Seth sat alone in his office, thinking about Andrew. Was he really Elian's father? The same guy who made it clear he didn't want commitment, now had a child. Did he get married? And if so, what exactly happened between them that night at the party? Later, when school ended, Andrew returned to pick up Elian. He came earlier as usual, forgetting about the detention, only to find Elian sitting in the detention room, with Thomas right beside him. After all that drama from his mom, he is still serving his punishment, Andrew thought with mild amusement. He was about to step inside when someone grabbed his arm. It was Seth. Where are you going to? Seth asked. Inside, Andrew said simply. You can't go in, Seth replied. Why not? It's my son's first time getting punished. Can't I go in for emotional support? Seth blinked in disbelief. Of course not, Andrew sighed, realizing how ridiculous he sounded. Whatever. After a short pause, Seth said, if you want somewhere to wait, you can wait in my office. Andrew gave him a questioning look. Oh, okay. When they got to the office, Seth pulled out his chair. You can sit here. It's really comfortable. Andrew raised a brow but sat down. Why do I feel like I'm getting some kind of special treatment? Seth just gave a sheepish smile. He pulled up another chair beside Andrew, and the room fell into a brief, quiet tension. Now that they were alone, Andrew couldn't stop thinking about that night, the party, the kiss, and how he'd walked away. The silence only made it worse. Just then, Seth spoke. I didn't think I'd see you again, especially not this soon. Andrew let out a nervous chuckle. Same here. I didn't expect to see you again, especially not as my son's principal. Seth then asked, did you leave that night because of your son? Andrew was caught off guard and quickly lied. Yeah, his nanny had to leave, and I couldn't leave him home alone. Seth nodded slowly, though his eyes stayed on Andrew. I thought maybe it was because you weren't satisfied with me. You didn't exactly seem to enjoy my kissing. Andrew let out a nervous cough. I don't think this is the right place to be talking about that. Seth smirked lightly. Then where's the right place? Should we meet up somewhere else, just us, and talk? I won't have time, Andrew said almost quickly. I've got work and parent duties. Work? Seth asked. What do you do? I'm a tattoo artist. Oh, what a coincidence, Seth said. I've actually been considering getting one lately, but I have no idea what design to choose. Maybe you could help me pick one? He was lying. Seth had never once thought of getting a tattoo. In fact, he was terrified of needles. Andrew pulled out his phone and showed him a few designs. Seth kept agreeing to every suggestion Andrew made, though he wasn't really paying attention. All he could focus on was how close they were, how their hands brushed every now and then as they scrolled through the pictures. Being this close again felt unreal. After being ghosted in that night, he thought he'd never see Andrew in person again. Andrew noticed Seth's gaze and subtly shifted away, finally picking a design himself since Seth clearly wasn't focused. Seth smiled. Since you chose the design, that means you'll be my artist, right? If you want, Andrew replied, handing him a business card. Seth took it with a grin. Then expect me. Moments later, Alion's detention was over. Andrew didn't spend another second in Seth's office. He picked up his son, finally ready to go home. On the way, Andrew couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at school. He wondered what had triggered Alion to hit Thomas, given that he had never seen his son react with anger before. When he asked Alion what had happened, Alion's voice was laced with sadness and guilt as he revealed that Thomas had taunted him, saying his mom had abandoned him because she didn't want him, and that nobody liked or wanted him. Andrew was bewildered hearing that. He immediately wrapped Alion in a warm hug, reassuring him that he was loved, wanted, and cherished, and that he shouldn't believe anything hurtful that others might say. Andrew wondered if Alion had always felt sad about not having a mother. He asked Alion if he has ever thought of meeting his mom. Alion nodded. Andrew's chest tightened. He apologized for his reckless past, how it had cost Alion a mother. He couldn't even recall what she looked like, let alone find her. Alion expressed he didn't really need a mom and was happy having just him, and Grandma and Grandpa. Andrew felt worse. He could tell Alion was trying to be considerate. If he couldn't find Alion's real mom, then maybe he could find another. That night, Andrew Ray downloaded the dating apps he had deleted years ago. He was finally willing to commit and settle down if it meant Alion could have a mom. As he scrolled through profiles, a familiar face appeared. He clicked on it. It was Seth. Andrew blinked, staring at Seth's dating profile. He scrolled through their old messages, memories rushing back. How much he had enjoyed talking to Seth and how well they had connected, even planning on meeting up face to face. How could he have forgotten? Reading through their old messages, Andrew couldn't help but smile a little. Back then, he had thought it was just casual fun, until he realized he was catching feelings. That scared him. And then came Seth's confession of growing feelings, his cue to run, as always. Now, staring at Seth's profile again, He wondered if Seth still remembered him. Just as he was thinking that, a notification popped up. A new message from Seth, and since Andrew already had their chat open, it instantly marked the message as read. He almost threw his phone out of embarrassment. Even though Seth hadn't chatted with anyone on the app since getting ghosted by Andrew, he had never deleted it, a small part of him hoping maybe Andrew hadn't truly disappeared. He'd eventually forgotten about the app until he saw a notification that Andrew was online. He had instantly messaged him, "Snooping around, Mr. Andrew?" Andrew quickly typed back, asking if Seth had recognized him already. Seth admitted he had. Andrew asked when, and Seth said, "Right at the party." "Why didn't you say anything then?" Andrew asked. Seth replied, "I wanted you to recognize me yourself, but you didn't." "I'm sorry," Andrew said. Seth's response came fast. "Sorry for ghosting me. Or for not recognizing me." Andrew replied, "Both." Seth teased, "I'll think about whether to accept the apology or not." Then he asked, "So what brings you back here after so many years?" Andrew replied truthfully, "I want to start dating properly. I thought of starting here. A lion needs a mom, so I'm ready to face my fear of commitment and give him a proper, complete family." Seth typed, "Don't you think that's cruel to tell me?" "Why?" Andrew asked. "You asked. You don't think it's cruel." Seth replied, "To tell this to someone you ghosted after he confessed his feelings for you?" Andrew blinked at his screen. "That was a long time ago. I don't think you'd still have those feelings." "What if I do?" Seth asked. Andrew went silent. Seth added, "Am I going to get ghosted again?" Andrew asked, "Are you just playing around?" Seth replied, "Maybe, maybe not." Andrew sighed, thinking Seth must be teasing him. Then Seth changed the topic. "Can I ask what happened to Alion's mom?" Andrew replied, "I don't even know if anything's happened to her. I don't remember what she looks like. She just left him at my doorstep with a note." Seth's response came in. "Wow." Andrew replied, "I know. I lived a pretty messed up life." Seth then asked, "So you only want a mom for him? What about a second dad?" Andrew replied, "He can't fill the space of a mom." Seth remarked, "So I already lost my chance before even getting it." Andrew couldn't tell if Seth was serious or joking. The next day at school, Seth was in his office when he heard a tiny knock. The door opened, and a lion stepped in. Seth looked surprised. "A lion? Do you need something?" A lion nodded shyly. "Can I have my short break snack here in your office? I promise I won't make a mess." Seth blinked. "Why don't you join your friends?" "No one wants to talk or play with me," a lion said quietly. "Because I hit Thomas and got him punished." Seth frowned in concern, wanting to do something immediately, but he realized there was nothing he could do. He couldn't punish the other kids. They hadn't technically broken any rules, and forcing them to include a lion might only make things worse. He sighed softly and nodded. "All right, you can have your snack here." A lion smiled a little and sat quietly, eating his snack. Before leaving, he said, "Please don't tell my dad. He'll get mad and worry." Seth nodded, feeling torn. He didn't want to keep things from Andrew, but he also didn't want to betray a lion's trust. During lunch break, a lion came back again with his lunchbox. Seth went out to get his own lunch, eating together with a lion so he doesn't feel alone. The situation with a lion and his classmates didn't last long because soon, Seth saw them playing together again. Still, a lion kept coming to Seth's office during breaks to eat and chat about random things. Seth enjoyed the company, and it gave him a chance to ask and learn more about Andrew through a lion. But he also knew a lion needed to spend more time with his classmates. Seth asked, "Don't you want to play with your friends instead of spending all your time here?" A lion shook his head. "I like talking with you instead." Seth smiled slightly. "But I'm the principal, and the principal's office isn't really a place you can keep coming to." A lion's face fell as he got down from his seat. "I understand. I won't bother you anymore," he said quietly, turning to leave. Seth sighed, unable to stand seeing him upset, and called him back. When a lion turned around, Seth added, "You can come to talk to me whenever you want, but you should also try to spend time with your classmates, okay?" A lion nodded and sat back down with a wide grin. Meanwhile, Andrew had been busy, trying to find someone who could be a mother figure for a lion. One day, he brought his date along to pick a lion up from school. When Seth saw Andrew with the woman beside him, he felt a twinge of disappointment, already guessing who she was. Later that night, seeing Andrew online on the dating site, Seth messaged him playfully, "Hey, still looking for a wife?" "I'm still available." Andrew replied, "I'm not looking for you." Ouch. Seth texted back, then added, I thought you found one already. Saw you while picking up a lion today. Andrew simply replied, I don't know. Seth asked, what happened? You don't like her? Andrew answered, it doesn't matter if I like her or not. What matters is if a lion likes her. He says he does, but I can tell he doesn't. Seth joked, if it's about a lion liking them, then you should pick me. I think he really likes me, Andrew replied. I can't tell if you're being serious or not when you say things like that. Seth typed, what if I am? Andrew hesitated, then replied, are you really? Seth sent, guess. Andrew groaned and ended it with, never mind. He wasn't ready to play guessing games with Seth. Seth himself wasn't sure if he was serious. He liked teasing Andrew. He felt good around him. But he didn't fully understand what he wanted yet. Maybe it was just lingering feelings. After a pause, Seth messaged again. Don't you think it's unfair to those women? If you don't like them but just want them to be a mom for a lion? Andrew replied, feelings can come later, after getting together. Seth asked, what if they don't? Andrew simply replied, they will. He knew Seth was right, but he was willing to do anything for his son. It was soon a Lions vacation, and as usual, the school held its annual event, where students and their parents took part in various competitions to win prizes. A lion always looked forward to it, hoping to win something, but every year ended the same. Andrew never managed to win any prize for him. Maybe it was because the other kids had the help of both parents, while a lion only had him. Andrew always noticed the lingering sadness in a lion's eyes when he looked at his classmates' complete families, a mom and a dad cheering together. It broke his heart every time. To make up for it, Andrew always took a lion out afterward, letting him choose wherever he wanted and whatever he wanted. This year was no different. Andrew had already prepared to take a lion out after the event. When they arrived, Seth was on stage, giving the opening speech as the school's principal. Andrew and a lion found a spot to settle down, waiting for the event to start. Seth disappeared once the speech was over, and Andrew unconsciously found himself looking around for him. The first game was a building challenge, where parents had to construct a given structure using specific materials within a set time. Andrew knew it wasn't his strong suit. He tried his best, but his hands kept fumbling, and the structure was barely holding up. It was mostly a lion doing all the careful work. Just as Andrew was stressing, a familiar voice came from beside him. Hey, need some help? Andrew looked up, startled, and saw Seth standing there. Can I join in? Seth asked, smiling. Is that even allowed? You're the principal, Andrew said. There's no rule saying the principal can't participate, Seth replied. Besides, it's boring just watching. Andrew turned to look at a lion, who was looking at him with pleading eyes, asking for Seth to join. A lion rarely asked for things, and whenever he did, Andrew found it hard to say no, so he agreed, even though he was already going to. Seth grinned and quickly joined them. Seth and a lion worked perfectly together, while Andrew stood by feeling oddly useless. The two got along so well that Andrew started to feel like the third wheel. He couldn't help but feel jealous, watching a lion's excitement and Seth's effortless charm with him. Even so, with Seth's help, they finally won something. For the first time ever, a lion was ecstatic, bouncing and hugging Seth. They joined more games together, and with Seth around, they kept winning prize after prize. A lion, the entire time, laughed and grinned from ear to ear, running to Seth first after every win to celebrate. Andrew watched, feeling both proud and jealous. Even though it stung a little that a lion seemed happier with Seth than with him, Andrew couldn't deny it. Seeing them together warmed something deep inside him. It would have been perfect, he thought, if only Seth were a woman. Then a lion could finally have the complete family he deserved. After the event, even though they had won plenty of prizes, Andrew still took a lion out to celebrate more. Knowing how much a lion loved animated movies, he took him to the cinema to watch the newest release. As they entered the theater, tickets and snacks in hand, a lion suddenly called out, Principal Seth. Andrew turned, startled. Sure enough, Seth was there, and their seats were right next to his. What are you doing here? Andrew asked. Seth answered. Why, can't I be here? Andrew eyed him skeptically. Just wondering why you're here alone to watch a kids' movie. Seth replied with a small smirk. Who said adults can't watch kids' movies? Andrew shrugged. Okay, if that's what you're into. He guided a lion to their seats, noticing the extra drinks and popcorn beside Seth, which could mean he wasn't alone. Just as he suspected, a woman and a little girl soon arrived and took the seats beside Seth. The woman chatted with him as he handed them the snacks. Andrew frowned slightly. Was that his wife? And the little girl, his daughter? If that was true, what about the flirting? What about that night at the party? Before he could spiral further, Seth's voice broke through his thoughts. She's my sister, Seth said casually, and the little girl's her daughter. My niece, Adela. Andrew blinked. Why are you telling me? I didn't ask. Seth smirked. Your expression did. I could see the gears turning in your head. I just don't want any misunderstandings between us, Andrew questioned. Us? Their conversation ended abruptly when the movie started, and people behind them shushed them. A while later, after finishing his snacks, Andrew started to grow sleepy. The movie wasn't holding his interest and was just about to doze off when he heard Seth's low voice near his ear. If you're sleepy, you can lean on my shoulder. I'll keep an eye on a lion and wake you when it's over. Andrew straightened. No thanks. I'm not that sleepy. Seth nodded. If you say so, but my shoulder will be here if you change your mind. Andrew tried to fight off his sleep, but failed. He woke up later to find the theater nearly empty, the movie over, and his head resting comfortably on Seth's shoulder. His heart skipped when he realized a lion wasn't beside him, until he spotted him talking and laughing with Adele next to her mother. You slept soundly, Seth said with a grin. Not bad for someone who wasn't that sleepy. Andrew sat up quickly, wiping his face in case he had drooled. He went over to get a lion, ready to leave, but paused and turned to Seth. Thank you. Seth blinked. For what? My shoulder? For today, Andrew said simply. At the school event, Seth asked, why would you thank me for that? Andrew continued, you made a lion really happy. I haven't seen him that excited in a long time. Seth smiled softly, then started leaning closer. If you really want to thank me then, flustered, Andrew immediately pushed him back. What are you doing? There are kids here. Seth grinned mischievously. What are you thinking? I was just going to ask you to write something nice about me on the school's staff evaluation site. I'll get fired if too many parents write bad things. I barely started this job. You'll be fine if you've truly been a good principal. I'll only write the truth, Seth responded. Then I hope you only have nice things to say. Andrew just shrugged and grabbed a lion. After saying goodbye to Adele and her mom, they left. Later at night, when Andrew was settled in bed and about to fall asleep, his phone buzzed with a message from Seth. Are you up? Andrew replied almost immediately, just about to sleep. Okay. I just wanted to make sure you got home safely. If you're fine, then good night. Andrew stared at the message, and before he knew it, a small smile crept onto his face. The moment he realized, he quickly wiped it off, questioning himself. Was he really falling for Seth again? Over the following days, Andrew completely forgot about his mission to find a mom for a lion. Without even realizing it, he spent all his time chatting with Seth on the dating site instead. One afternoon, Andrew received a message confirming a tattoo appointment. Thinking it was a regular client, he accepted it after chatting up with them to know what to prepare. But on the appointment date, when he opened the door, he only saw Seth. Andrew blinked. Why are you here? Seth smiled. Where else would I be? I'm here for my appointment. Andrew sighed in disbelief. It was you? You could have just said so instead of acting mysterious. Well, Seth said, pretending to look offended. It's kind of disappointing that you don't even have my number saved. I never had it to begin with, Andrew replied. If it's still the same one from years ago, then I lost it. Seth's tone turned slightly serious. Then, can you not lose it this time? Now that you have it again, Andrew felt his stomach twist, flustered by the sudden seriousness in his voice. He gave a small nod, trying to play it cool. I'll try. Satisfied, Seth smiled and asked, where's the lion? He's taking a nap, Andrew said. Seth's smile shifted into something sly. Andrew narrowed his eyes. What's that look for? Nothing, Seth said quickly, though the smirk stayed. Andrew gave him a suspicious look, then led him into the tattoo area. As soon as they entered, Andrew turned and nearly jumped. Seth had already taken his shirt off. Andrew immediately turned around, covering his eyes. What are you doing? Why is your shirt off? Seth replied calmly. I want to get the tattoo on my abdomen. You don't need to take your whole shirt off for that. Andrew snapped. All right, Seth said, chuckling as he put it back on. But why are you acting like you've never seen me shirtless before? When Andrew finally turned back, Seth's shirt was back in place, but his teasing grin lingered. Andrew tried to ignore it and asked what design he wanted. Instead of answering, Seth stepped closer, too close, until their faces were only inches apart. I'm sure you see shirtless guys all the time in your job, he said in a low voice. So why are you getting shy with me? Even Andrew didn't know. He used to be completely unfazed by these things. But now, his heart was racing, and his brain felt scrambled. He quickly faked a cough right in Seth's face to make him back up. He pretended to focus on his tools, but he couldn't even remember where half of them were. He really was losing his cool. Seth lay back on the tattoo chair like nothing, and said casually, I'll get whatever design you choose for me. Andrew sighed, trying to pull himself together, and finally picked a simple, random design. Since Seth didn't seem to care what it was, he got started. The moment he prepared his tools, Seth's confidence started to fade. Andrew noticed the look on his face and smirked. Scared? Seth immediately denied it. No, he said, though the fear in his voice betrayed him. Is it going to hurt? Seth asked hesitantly. Andrew replied with a teasing grin. You'll find out when I start. Seth shut his eyes tightly, bracing himself. Andrew chuckled. Are you sure you actually want a tattoo? Absolutely, Seth said, still sounding far from confident. Andrew chuckled and announced, Okay, I'm about to begin. Seth flinched hard the moment the machine touched his skin. Please try not to move so much, Andrew said. You'll end up getting hurt. Seth groaned softly. Can you, maybe hold my hand? For emotional support? I need both hands to work, Andrew said flatly. Oh, okay, Seth mumbled, shutting his eyes tight again. Andrew added, Why are you acting like a kid at the dentist? He continued working carefully, trying to keep the pain minimal. A few moments later, when he noticed how stiff Seth was, Andrew gave in to impulse. Without saying a word, he slid one of his hands into Seth's. Seth's eyes flew open the instant he felt it. A wide grin spread across his face. He teased, Do you offer this service too? Andrew's face burned. He quickly tried to pull his hand away, but Seth caught it and interlocked their fingers. You can't take it back now. While Andrew worked on Seth couldn't stop fidgeting with his hand. Your hand smells really good, he said, sniffing it. What hand cream do you use? Stop talking to me, Andrew muttered. I can't multitask, especially when you're holding my other hand. Seth just smiled, content to keep holding it. The warmth distracted him from the pain until Andrew finally said, I'm done. So soon? Seth asked, surprised. Andrew told him to check the tattoo in the mirror. Seth stared at it for a moment, then turned with an amused grin. If you wanted us to get matching tattoos, you could have just said so. Matching? Andrew blinked. Seth stepped closer, poking his chest. You have the same one here. Andrew checked, and sure enough, he did. It was a small, half-forgotten tattoo he'd gotten years ago. How did you even know that? I memorized everything about you, Seth said, subtly serious. Andrew's heart stuttered. Trying to act unfazed, he replied, Well, it was a mistake. I can change it if you want. Don't, Seth said immediately. It's perfect. Andrew cleaned and covered the tattoo, gave him aftercare instructions, and said, All right, time to make your payment. What happens after I pay? Seth asked. That's the part where you leave. Appointment's over. What if I don't want to leave? Seth asked. You have to. I have another client coming in. I'll just sit quietly in that corner and not bother you, Andrew sighed. No, won't be able to focus if you're here. Seth's smile deepened. Why? Do I make you flustered? Flustered? Andrew scoffed, turning away to hide his blush. Stay if you want, whatever. Seth did, sitting silently in the corner as Andrew worked. The longer he watched Andrew, the clearer it became. This wasn't leftover affection. He had fallen for him again. Andrew, meanwhile, could barely concentrate with Seth's eyes on him. When Seth finally slipped out quietly, Andrew could finally breathe. But he wondered why Seth had left without saying goodbye. A while later, Andrew asked to take a moment to check on Elian and quickly fix something for him to eat. But as he stepped inside, he was surprised to be greeted by the aroma of food. He stopped short when he saw Seth and Elian cooking together in the kitchen. The sight made him smile, before he quietly slipped back out so they wouldn't notice. When he returned after finishing with his client, he pretended to act surprised. You're still here. I thought you'd left already. Seth turned with a smile. I realized you hadn't eaten anything since I came. I didn't want you to get off work tired and still have to cook. I'm used to it, Andrew replied. You shouldn't be, Seth said lightly. Say you love me, and I'll cook for you every day. Andrew scoffed, trying to suppress a smile. Seth made him and Elian sit while he served the food, joining them afterward. Andrew watched the two of them with a warm heart as Seth encouraged a lion to eat his vegetables, deboning his meat, and wiping sauce off his mouth when he made a mess. After eating, Seth immediately began washing the dishes. Andrew tried to stop him. "I'll do it. You've already done enough." Seth shook his head. "Go rest. You're tired." Andrew eyed him suspiciously. "If you're doing this just to buy time so you can stay the night, it won't work. You're going home even if it's 2 a.m. Seth gave a sheepish grin. "You caught me." They ended up washing together, with a lion on a stool between them. Seth kept sneaking his hand into Andrew's under the running water, and Andrew kept pulling away before a lion noticed. When they were finally done, Seth leaned back against the counter, clearly out of excuses to stay. "Don't you think I deserve a reward for all I've done today?" "You did all that on your own," Andrew replied. "I didn't force you." "Wow," Seth said dramatically. "Cold. At least give me something." "I can give you a discount on your next tattoo," Andrew said. Seth shook his head. "No way. I'm not going through that again. Unless, maybe the hand-holding part?" He took a step closer, his voice taking on a flirtatious tone. "Or maybe something more." Andrew tried joking. "Like what? A slap on the cheek?" Seth shot back. "Why not make it a kiss instead?" Andrew's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, he was speechless, a fuzzy feeling of desire spreading through his chest. Seth gave in. "All right. I'm done joking around. I'll really go now. Walk me out." Andrew nodded and followed him outside. As Seth turned to leave, Andrew grabbed his hand, and before he could think, pressed his lips against Seth's. Seth's eyes widened in shock, not expecting Andrew to actually kiss him. But then he melted into the kiss, his lips responding eagerly as he pulled Andrew closer, cupping his face in his hands. The kiss deepened, but just as Seth's intensity grew, Andrew abruptly broke away, leaving Seth standing there, confused and hungry. Once again, Andrew had fled when his feelings became too overwhelming. He couldn't deny the truth. He had fallen again for Seth, deeply. But he was a father, and his priorities had to lie with the lion's happiness. He had veered off course from his goal of finding a mother for his son, and now it was time to refocus. Even if it meant suppressing his own feelings, Andrew knew he had to prioritize giving a lion a normal family, a mom and a dad. With a heavy heart, Andrew made the difficult decision to let go of Seth and redirect his efforts toward building a traditional family for a lion's sake. For a whole week, Andrew ignored Seth's messages and calls. Finally, Seth, unable to take it anymore, went to see him, only to find Andrew and a lion dressed up, heading out. "Where are you two going?" he asked. Andrew looked caught off guard but stayed composed. "We're going on a date." Seth's heart sank. "A date? With who?" "My soon-to-be wife," Andrew answered casually. Seth blinked. "Why suddenly?" "It's not sudden," Andrew replied. "I've spoken to you about it before, remember?" Seth chuckled at himself, a hollow laugh. "Right, how could I forget?" He took a deep breath, then quietly said, "What if I told you I don't want you to go?" Andrew asked, "And why would I stay just because you asked me to?" "I love you," Seth blurted out. Andrew froze, completely taken aback. "Huh? I love you," Seth repeated. "Do you love me too?" "I want to be your family, to spend the rest of my life with you and a lion as one. I want to be someone you can lean on. I can be whoever and whatever you need me to be." Andrew's heart felt heavy, almost giving in, but he stopped himself. "I'm sorry if I misled you in any way, but it's impossible between us. I got distracted for a bit, and I think it's best if any form of relationship besides being my son's school principal stops." Seth took a slow breath, trying to stay composed. "Is that really what you want?" Andrew hesitated, then nodded. Seth stared at him for a long silent moment. "Maybe this is what I needed to hear," he said finally. "I'll respect your choice since I can't force you anyway." He turned to leave. "Good luck finding what you want." "Really?" Andrew's chest ached as Seth walked away, but he had already made his decision. With a heavy heart, he took a lion and left for his date. The whole time, he couldn't focus. His mind kept drifting back to Seth. His date had brought her son along, and after the introductions, the two kids ran off to play. They'd chosen a park for the date specifically so the children could enjoy themselves. A while later, his date's son came running back, crying, "Something's wrong with the lion." Panic shot through Andrew as he rushed over, only to find a lion unconscious on the ground, his body breaking out in hives. A half-eaten chocolate bar lay beside him, peanuts visible inside. Andrew's heart dropped. He scooped a lion into his arms to rush him to the hospital, trembling as he tried to wake him. His vision blurred with tears as he whispered desperate prayers, begging for his son to be okay. His date followed in shock, realizing that her son had given a lion the chocolate. At the hospital, doctors rushed a lion into the ER. Andrew collapsed to the floor, lifeless, not even hearing his date's frantic apologies. All he wanted in that moment was to call someone. And that someone was Seth. With trembling hands and a breaking voice, Andrew found Seth's contact and called. When Seth saw Andrew's name flashing on his screen, he hesitated. He didn't want to answer, not after being told to stay away. He couldn't take the pain of false hope again. But just as the call was about to end, his thumb betrayed him, and he answered. What greeted him was Andrew's choked, tearful voice. Seth. The sound alone made Seth's chest tighten. What happened? He demanded. Andrew's voice broke as he tried to explain, but Seth didn't need the details. He understood immediately. Which hospital? He asked, already grabbing his keys. By the time Seth arrived, Andrew had calmed slightly, but the moment he saw Seth, everything came crashing down again. He ran straight into Seth's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Seth held him tightly, running a soothing hand through his hair. He's going to be okay, he whispered. I promise. Moments later, the doctors came out. He's stable now, they said. He's just resting. Andrew gave a shaky sigh of relief, still crying as he rushed to a lion's side. Seth followed, but before he could enter, Andrew's date, as he assumed, stepped in ahead of him. He stopped in his tracks, watching quietly. A twinge of jealousy hit him, even though he knew this wasn't the right time or place for such feelings. So, he stayed outside, waiting in case Andrew needed him again. Andrew finally calmed after seeing a lion sleeping peacefully. His date apologized again, explaining she hadn't known her son would give a lion chocolate, or that he was allergic. It's not your fault, Andrew said gently. You couldn't have known. Still, she blamed herself, insisting she should have been more careful. After a moment, she sighed and said, I don't think this date is going to work out, is it? Andrew looked guilty, but nodded slightly. It's not because of what happened, he quickly clarified. Honestly, I knew it wasn't going to work from the start. I just kept lying to myself. She gave him a small, knowing smile, glancing toward the hallway where Seth waited. Is it because of him? Andrew didn't answer, but his silence said enough. After a moment, he mumbled, but we can't be together. He apologized for wasting her time, but she shook her head gently. You don't have to apologize. Then, after a pause, she asked, if you don't mind me asking, why can't you two be together? Andrew's voice was quiet. I just want a normal family for my son. She blinked. Normal family? What's a normal family to you? Andrew looked down, saying nothing. She continued, to me, all that matters is that the people raising the child love each other and are happy. That's what makes a family. Kids just need a happy home. If the parents aren't happy or don't love each other, the kids feel that too. You know, sometimes we think we're protecting our kids by denying ourselves love, but what we're really teaching them is how to live without it. Andrew gave her a thoughtful look before smiling softly. He just thanked her for understanding and for coming along to the hospital, later offering to walk her out as she needed to leave. Outside, Seth, who had been waiting and wondering why they were taking so long, immediately stood up when the door finally opened. He looked confused when Andrew's date gave him a small, knowing smile before turning to Andrew. You should stay, she told Andrew. I can leave from here. Seth asked quietly. How's a lion? He's okay now, Andrew said, tired but relieved. Seth nodded. Do you need me to do anything? Andrew bit his lip, glancing up at him. Can you just stay with me? Seth hesitated. Are you sure that's all you need? Andrew nodded quickly. Yeah. After a pause, Seth sighed softly. Okay then, I'll stay. Andrew's face instantly lit up. The two of them went back into the room and sat on either side of a lion's bed. Silence settled between them. After a while, Andrew broke it. Thank you for coming when I called. Seth gave a faint smile. No need. I worry about a lion too. Andrew nodded. The room fell silent again. A few minutes later, Seth stood up. I'm going to grab some water, he said before stepping out. As the door closed, Andrew sighed quietly. He doesn't even want to stay in the same room as me, he thought. Just then, a lion stirred. His eyelids fluttered open, and Andrew immediately called for the doctors. After a quick check, They confirmed Elian was fine. He could even be discharged that night. But Andrew chose to stay, wanting to be absolutely sure his son was completely okay before taking him home. Did I ruin your date? Elian asked weakly. Andrew sighed. You should think about yourself first. He paused, then asked, why didn't you come to me the moment you realized the chocolate had peanuts? We've practiced that before, remember? You've done it before perfectly. Elian looked down, fidgeting with the blanket. I didn't want to worry you or ruin your date. Andrew's chest tightened in frustration. I'm your father. You can worry me. You're supposed to. How do you think I'd feel if something happened to you? Tears filled Elian's eyes. I'm sorry, Dad. I just didn't want to be a burden. Andrew froze. A burden? He repeated. Where did you even hear that word from? Elian sniffed. Grandma and Grandpa. They said Mom left because I was a burden, and that you stopped having fun because of me. Andrew's breath caught. I just wanted to be a good kid, and not be a burden, Elian continued. So you wouldn't leave too. Andrew's heart shattered. He immediately grabbed his phone and called his parents, demanding an explanation. They sounded just as shocked and explained never said that. They only told him the story about his birth and how he showed up at his doorstep. They didn't know he'd take it that way. Andrew's throat tightened. He couldn't believe his little boy had been carrying that kind of guilt all this time. Tears welled in his eyes as he pulled Elian into a tight hug. You are not a burden. You never were. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I will never, ever leave you. I love you more than anything in this world, okay? Elian clung to him, crying. Seth returned around that time, but when he saw the father and son holding each other, he quietly stepped back and decided to give them space. When things finally calmed down, Andrew realized Seth still hadn't come back inside. He frowned, wondering if he had left. He turned to Elian. Hey, do you like Seth? Elian's eyes lit up immediately as he nodded with a big grin. Andrew smiled. What would you think if I got together with him? Like, if the three of us lived together as a family? Elian's eyes lit up. Are you going to marry Principal Seth? What? No, Andrew blurted, flustered. I mean, not yet. I don't know. I want Principal Seth to live with us, Elian said proudly. He's my best friend. Andrew laughed. Between the two of us, who do you like more? Elian pretended to think, making Andrew gasp. You don't have to think that hard. You should say me instantly. He started tickling Elian, who burst into laughter, and soon Andrew was laughing with him. The room filled with laughter. Moments later, Seth returned, with food. Andrew felt a wave of relief that he hadn't left. Thanks, Andrew said quietly. No need, Seth replied flatly. I was buying and figured it'd be selfish to only get mine. He then went to sit beside Elian. Andrew could feel the cold distance in Seth's tone, but he knew he'd caused it himself. Since Elian needed to stay overnight for monitoring, Andrew mentioned it, hoping Seth would offer to stay too. But Seth said, if you're staying the night, then I should head home. Andrew felt a pang of disappointment. He wanted to find an excuse to make him stay, and almost miraculously, thunder rumbled outside as rain began pouring heavily. Trying not to sound too happy about it, Andrew said, with this kind of rain, are you sure you can leave? Maybe. You could stay until it stops. But Seth just replied, it's fine. I drove here. I'll be okay. Andrew sighed in disappointment. He needed another reason to make him stay. Then, as a loud clap of thunder cracked through the air, Andrew flinched dramatically, crouching and covering his ears. Ah. Seth immediately moved closer, concerned. Hey, are you okay? Andrew shook his head. I have a crippling fear of thunder, he said, pretending to tremble. How am I supposed to take care of Elian when I'm like this? Seth exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair. Fine, he said finally. I'll stay. Andrew wanted to grin and cheer but kept his act going, giving a weak, relieved nod instead. Seth went to grab some blankets to make a spot on the floor. Andrew insisted, you can take the sofa. I'll sleep here. Seth just said, no need. Andrew groaned quietly to himself. He was starting to hate. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, Andrew couldn't. He kept glancing at Seth on the floor, looking peaceful. He quietly got down, crawling closer until he was beside him. He lay there silently, just watching Seth's face, wishing he could take back everything he'd said that morning. Inch by inch, he moved closer until their bodies were touching. Seth, who wasn't really asleep, wondered why Andrew was acting this way after rejecting him so clearly before. By morning, they woke up tangled together, their faces inches apart. Good morning, Andrew murmured with a sleepy smile. Seth blinked, unimpressed. Why are you here? Andrew froze, remembering he wasn't supposed to be sleeping there. I don't know. Maybe I sleepwalked. Seth sighed and gently pushed him away before standing. After checking on Elian, he quietly said, I should get going. Andrew tried, wait, we can leave together, but Seth just declined and left. The following days after Elian was discharged, Andrew texted Seth every day, but was ignored. He could have gone to his house, but realized he didn't even know where Seth lived. He couldn't let things end like this. So he texted Seth again, telling him to meet at the cinema, where they'd once bumped into each other. A movie Seth had mentioned dying to see was finally out, and Andrew wrote that he wasn't leaving until Seth showed up. Seth saw the message but ignored it, at least at first. He told himself he wouldn't go, but deep down, he knew he would. Andrew left Elian with his parents and went to the cinema. He bought 2 tickets and waited. Seth didn't come, so he watched the movie alone, then another, and another. By the time the theater closed, he was still there, outside, cold, tired, and still waiting. Seth finally gave in and drove there, also to see if Andrew was serious. When he arrived, he froze at the sight of Andrew outside the empty cinema, rubbing his hands together in the cold, still waiting. Andrew ran excitedly towards Seth the moment he saw him. I knew you'd come, he said with a bright smile. Seth, however, looked at him seriously. Why are you doing this? Andrew's smile faded. I'm sorry for pushing you away. I want to take back everything I said that day. I want you to be more than just Elian's principal to me. It took me a long time to admit it, but I love you. I fell for you years ago, and I've fallen for you again now. I don't want to be apart from you anymore. Can we start over? Will you be my boyfriend? Seth just stared at him, his expression flat. And what exactly are you expecting right now? That I jump into your arms excited? What do you take me for? Someone you can walk in and out of whenever you please? Andrew shook his head quickly. Seth continued, how do I know that if we get together, you won't push me away again? That you won't decide you want something more normal? That won't happen, Andrew said immediately. I promise. I'm done running away. I just want to spend the rest of my life with you. Please, give me one last chance. Seth sighed, frustrated, mostly at himself for wanting to give in so easily after hearing just a few words from Andrew. Seeing Andrew shivering slightly in the cold, he took off his jacket and draped it over him. What were you thinking, standing out here dressed like this? Andrew's eyes brightened, thinking this meant Seth was forgiving him. But then Seth said flatly, go home, and turned to leave. Andrew quickly wrapped his arms around him from behind. You can't leave. I won't let you go until you give me a clear answer. Just one chance. Seth pried Andrew's hands off him and continued walking to his car. But before he could drive off, Andrew had already slipped into the passenger seat and buckled his seatbelt. Seth glanced at him with a tired look. Get out of the car. Andrew shook his head stubbornly. I'm not leaving. Letting out another sigh, Seth started the engine and drove him home. When they arrived, he said, we're here. Aren't you getting out? Only if you come in with me, Andrew replied. Seth sighed again and got out of the car, but Andrew stayed put, refusing to move. Seth walked over to his side, opened the door, and leaned in to unbuckle his seatbelt himself. Andrew seized the moment as he reached up, cupped Seth's face, and pressed his lips to his. Seth froze, eyes widening in shock. What are you doing? Andrew only smiled and leaned in again, kissing him. His voice came out, small and pleading between their lips. Can you give us another chance, please? At this point, Seth was ready to give in as he licked his lips, savoring the taste of Andrew's kiss. But then he stopped himself, exhaled sharply, and unbuckled Andrew's seatbelt. Without a word, he lifted Andrew out of the car and carried him up to the porch, setting him down. Go inside. Andrew refused to budge. If you leave, I'll just stay out here until you come back. He took off the jacket Seth had given him, his eyes welling up with tears as he sniffled loudly. Seth hesitated, hearing the sniffles behind him as he turned away. He stood there for a long, heavy moment before groaning under his breath. Ugh, I hate you, he muttered, spinning back around. In one quick motion, he grabbed Andrew's face and kissed him hard. Andrew gasped, then melted instantly, wrapping his arms tightly around Seth's neck, returning the kiss with all the emotion he'd been holding back. It was messy, desperate, breathless. Seth's hand slipped to the back of Andrew's head, fingers threading into his hair as his thumb brushed tenderly against his cheek. Andrew suddenly broke the kiss, panting softly. Fear and disappointment flickered across Seth's face. What's wrong? Running away again? Andrew shook his head. No, I just wanted to say I missed you. Did you miss me? Seth breathed a subtle sigh of relief. I tried not to. Andrew smiled faintly and kissed him again, just a small peck this time, before pulling him into a tight embrace. I'm sorry for pushing you away. From now on, I'm sticking to you. Hard. I won't let go, even if you want me to. Seth's arms wrapped around Andrew, a soft, relieved smile on his face. As they hugged, he murmured, Are we going to keep standing out here? I'm freezing. Andrew pulled back, and they exchanged a knowing smile. He quickly unlocked the door and pulled Seth inside, shutting the door behind them with a soft thud. Seth's back hit the door as Andrew pressed against him, their lips meeting in a passionate kiss. Andrew and Seth got together, soon moving in, building a cozy home filled with love and laughter. Elian was over the moon when he found out Seth would be a permanent part of their lives. Seth effortlessly stepped into his role as a partner and parent. Andrew couldn't have asked for a more supportive partner. As he watched Seth with Elian, his heart swelled with love and gratitude. He knew he'd made the right decision in following his heart and choosing Seth.